Hey guys, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great, as I always say, and in this video, I have a story from a Colorado forest ranger. It doesn't specifically say forest ranger, but these are the things that a forest ranger does, at least in my province, so I'm calling it a forest ranger. So, as always, pull up a stump, and yeah, let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. So, a little background to start. I work as a topographer tracker for a local group in Colorado and Wyoming. My job consists of surveying areas and mapping out common game trails and popular places for herds to gather for hunting and ecological purposes. When I'm out, I'm mostly on an ATV until I find a game trail, which then I map it out on foot. When I'm going long distances, I stop at these outposts that have been set up along the trail to refuel and rest for the night, or to go to in case of hazardous weather. I've seen some things that have made me question what's out there, such as mutilated deer, bull elks torn in half, holes dug through the fresh body of animals from the inside out. While seeing these things is very unsettling, I usually shrug them off as some kind of nasty parasite or a freak bear attack. The thing that made me wonder whether or not I was up against something much bigger didn't happen until recently, while near the Colorado-Wyoming border, in between outposts on the first week of December. To start, it was snowing fairly lightly, kind of spitting really. The pines stopped most of the snow from falling on me while I was walking back to my ATV. While it was snowing lightly, the layer on the ground was at least a foot deep off trail, making it pretty difficult to move or be quiet while lumbering through it. I got on the ATV and I drove about half a mile up the trail, almost crossing over into Wyoming, when I noticed another trail that looked freshly made. When I got off the ATV, I noticed some small droplets of blood in the snow going down the trail, with what looked like bear prints with something dragging behind it. I grabbed my gun off the back of my ATV and slung it over my shoulder. The trail looked fresh, but the prints and the blood were starting to get covered by a thin layer of snowfall. While walking along the trail, I noticed something kind of weird in the middle of the bear tracks. It looked like a human foot almost, but rather elongated and thin, with only 4 toes on the end. These tracks twisted within the bear prints themselves, almost like the animal's foot spun around coming out of the bear track. I continued on while occasionally glancing into the track, and sure enough, the prints were still there. When I got to the end in this large clearing, I stopped following the bear tracks. Something about being in this large clearing with an unknown animal was making me very uneasy. I mapped it out and placed a red line over it, indicating a high predatory area. On the way back, I noticed something strange about my own boot prints. Now, I'm a big guy, standing 6'2" with a size 13 boot, but whatever had made the tracks had a footprint significantly larger than my own. But that's not the worst part. Whatever it was had followed my boot prints back, heading in the same direction I was. Whatever it was had snuck behind me and was heading towards my ATV. I shouldered my rifle and I put a round in the chamber. I walked back, and while walking back I was glancing down every so often to see if the twisted footprints were indeed still in mine. When I got back to my ATV, I noticed that the prints circled my vehicle and stopped behind it, and then shuffled a bit. Then, I noticed that my jerrycan was missing, and that thing had left a trail of gasoline down the road from where I came. I hopped onto my quad to get going in the opposite direction, hoping to distance myself from whatever it was that stole my fuel. After crossing over into Wyoming, I noticed that everything was rather still. It was still snowing, but the flakes almost seemed to be suspended in the air, not falling, but not static either. and I couldn't hear anything when my ATV was off. No animals, no snowfall, not even my own breathing. It was almost like something had hit the mute button and stopped all sound from existing. After looking around, I found another game trail, this time a few 100 yards off the main trail. I dismounted and I walked towards the opening in the trees, with pristine snow covering the rocky terrain around me. All along the trail I would catch fleeting glimpses of a shadow. Not shadows, no, just one, moving along the trail with me. I put it off to lack of sleep making me see things. But on my way back, I got a chill up my spine. In my own boot prints were the same tracks that I had saw at the last trail. The same twisty, human-like print, but this time something was touching the ground in front of them, like a swipe here and there, almost like whatever it was tracking me by my scent. I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. I reached for my sidearm, kicking myself for leaving the rifle on the ATV. I heard a ragged breath from my left, like if you collapsed along on a deer. I drew and fired into the trees, striking an aspen and blowing a hole through its small frame. I saw nothing, no movement, no snowfall, and no animal. I started getting the same feeling that I was getting from the clearing, and I ran back to my quad. Whatever had been following me had already beat me there. I followed the tracks around my ATV like last time, and stopped to see what it took next. It took my rifle. My rifle, a large rifle that would require something very large to carry it off in its mouth, or something with hands and the strength to carry it. I looked a little closer at the prints and found something that I had missed every time. Inside the footprints, right where the twist ended, I noticed 4 very long appendages peeking through the twisted snow. It looked like a monkey foot, but longer and more hand-like, but not quite enough to be human. I mounted and hit the throttle, spinning out a bit until I got traction, and I went shooting down the road. I was too low on fuel to go back to a main road where I could get help, so I was forced to go to my next outpost. When I arrived, the small cabin, hut-like structure looked so comforting and protective that I almost cried. It had fuel for the quad, a safe place for me to sleep, and a radio for help. The sun was setting, and I was firing up the stove after starting the generator when my radio crackled and came to life. I jumped when I heard the static hiss. I ran over to the radio and requested an evac or an extra team for a safe escort. When asked why, I lied to them and said that I was being hunted by a bear and I lost my rifle on the trail. The voice on the other end scoffed, but obliged. My team would be there by morning. When I hung up the radio and started to get comfy and safe, I heard a thump at my door. I froze in my bed, not knowing what to do. I finally got up after debating whether or not to just hide. I'm no coward, I thought. I grabbed my sidearm and I walked towards the door. I peeked out the small window to see if someone or something was out there. All I saw was darkness. Stupidly, I opened the door and shouted, "If you don't leave, I will kill you. You took one of my guns, but I still have the other." There was no response. I looked at my door to see what hit it, and only saw the remnants of a snowball. Just a snowball. I waited to see if I could see any movement, when another snowball came flying out of the darkness to my left side and hit my shoulder. "You better run, or I am going to kill you," I yelled out again. I slammed the door and ran out to confront whatever threw the snowball. I ran towards where the ball from, watching for prints or signs of movement. I saw something in the darkness that looked like a man had fallen and was scrambling on the ground to get up, making that same raspy breathing noise. I stopped and aimed, but saw that whatever it was in front of me had continued to run on all fours at an alarming speed, faster than I could run. I froze in place when I saw the black silhouette dart off into the darkness, not sure what to do. After listening and hearing nothing, no breathing, no running, I headed back to my hut. Once I got into the clearing that my hut was in, I stopped, took a breath, relieved that I had made it out of the woods alive. I took a deep breath and calmed myself down, and started walking towards my cabin, illuminated by the lone porch light on the deck. I looked down, trying to follow my own tracks back to conserve energy. I nearly vomited. The twisted footprints were in my tracks, heading towards the cabin. I saw the trail heading back towards my cabin, each twisted footprint slamming down into my own until it got to my porch. Amidst all the snow dragged on by the thing was my rifle and my jerry can placed neatly on the porch, leaning against the wall. The door was asked and jarred open a bit. I could have sworn I saw the leg of the thing dart in as soon as I looked at it. I wish that I could say that I busted in there and shot the thing dead, but I was too frozen with fear to do anything but stand there. I wish I could say that I was brave and fought the good fight, but I didn't. I crumpled onto the ground, cradling my knees until sunup. I spent 6 hours out there in the darkness, waiting for whatever that thing was to come out and finish me, but it never did. My crew found me, covered in snow with my gun drawn and pointed at my cabin. They questioned me and searched the cabin. All of my food was eaten. My bed was torn up and made into a makeshift nest, like something like a dog would sleep in, and the radio was destroyed beyond repair. But there was no sign of whatever it was that was hunting me that night. So, what did you think of that story? It made me realize that I should never go and explore the woods in Colorado near Wyoming. Just gonna stay away from there real quick. Now, this didn't happen in Colorado, but where I get my hair cut, she told me a pretty cool story. Well, I should say pretty cool. It's pretty crazy, really. So it's like another deep woods kind of story. So back in the old days, when you were working in the woods, the cook would stay behind to keep the fire going and all that stuff to make sure that everything didn't freeze. So it would be the grandfather or great-grandfather, I can't remember, of the woman who cuts my hair. She said that they went back after their vacation type thing, and their big camp was cold. And they went into the cook's room and saw they had a blanket over him. And they pulled the blanket off, and he was dead. But at some point, either before he died or just after, there was a whisker that he had grown that was caught on the blanket. So when they took off the blanket, it tore his face off too. So that's definitely some trauma right there. I would 100% just never work in the woods again after that. I don't know about anybody else. So yeah, if you watch this, then I hope I told your story right and didn't screw up the details too bad. But anyways, let me know what you thought of the main story down in the comments. If you want to support the channel, there are links in the description and all that good stuff. And thank you for pulling up a stump. Thank you for watching, and I shall see you in the next one.